What's up, guys? With the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes coming out, why not go ahead and review another movie that's kind of mixed in terms of opinions, Tim Burton's remake of the original classic. This is Planet of the Apes, 2001. Let's go. Planet of the Apes, 2001, stars Mark Wahlberg, Helena Bonham Carter, Tim Roth, and is directed by Tim Burton. What's up, guys? It's catalog review time. This one is a patron request for Chappie, good friend, and he recently became a patron. If you are a Drumdums patron or a channel member, you can get a review in your honor if you're of a certain tier. And I thank my patrons and my channel members so much. You guys keep me afloat. And love you guys to death. You always give me great movie recommendations too. A lot of movies I haven't seen, and a lot of times you'll request movies that I wouldn't have thought about reviewing, you know, because my time, I probably wouldn't have ventured into the other Planet of the Apes movies leading up to this new one. But I love this last trilogy that came out, starting with Rise of the Planet of the Apes. But funny enough, I've never seen any of the original ones. But I did see the 2001 Tim Burton one. So technically that's the first Apes movie I ever saw. I have some interesting memories of that movie. I happened to be deployed because this came out in 2001 and I came out before 9/11, I believe. I think this movie came out in August of 2001. Don't quote me on that. But I remember I was deployed at the time. I deployed in June of that year. I was set to come home in September of that year. 9/11 happened, but luckily I was still able to get out of there. And they had to do some kind of covert operation to get us out of there. We had to be very hush-hush about it. I need you to be at this location. This was in Kuwait, by the way. At a certain hour of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, let's say, and then we're gonna sneak you onto a plane and we're gonna get you out of Kuwait. So, but I remember watching a lot of the movies that came out that year, like The Mummy Returns. I remember that was one. They'd sell the bootlegs. And so I saw like a bootleg of this and Mummy Returns and a few other movies. I remember liking this movie, but I was just kind of just confused. Not really confused, but I wasn't like over the moon about it. And maybe that's because I had never considered myself a huge Planet of the Apes guy, having not seen the originals. But I'm also not like a massive Tim Burton fanatic. I like Tim Burton. I think his movies are hit and miss for me. I love his Batman movies. But some of his movies, I could, take them or leave them. And I think Planet of the Apes was maybe one of those movies. For some reason, there's sort of a disconnect that I have with this movie still to this day. Every time I watch it, I own the Blu-ray. I have a decent time watching the movie, but there's always a little bit, I think sometimes Tim Burton can be a little bit too Tim Burton in his movies. I don't know, but I know behind the scenes, this movie had its own problems as well. Now, this was a loose remake because from what I hear, the story here is a little different. And I know that that iconic ending in the original, they kind of switch it in this movie. But the story takes place in 2029, which we're only 5 years away from. Mark Wahlberg plays Captain Leo Davidson. He's an astronaut, and he crashes on this planet, which is an apes planet. The apes rule everything, and the humans are pretty much treated like animals. So it's kind of an obvious lesson, and this lesson was in the original movies as well. And I think if you're an animal lover, then you definitely can relate to this movie. Oftentimes animals are abused, and I think this movie kind of opens our eyes to that. And what if the roles were reversed and the animals had the intelligence, and they treated us like we treat them on our planet. But you can also look at this movie as just fun entertainment because it has that too. This movie's not boring at all. And, when he crash lands on that planet and he gets captured, just like us, he realizes that there are different types of apes. You know, there are assholes and there are good people. Helena Bonham Carter plays Ari. She sympathizes with the humans. She sort of befriends them. As a matter of fact, behind the scenes in the original script, Burton actually wanted to make kind of like a love affair, like a love relationship between Mark Wahlberg and Helena Bonham Carter. But the studio, 20th Century Fox, they said, no, that would be a little bit too weird. We don't want to do that. We don't want animals and humans mating in these movies, being love interests. And I do agree with them. I think that would have been a little bit weird. But it is kind of confusing because you have Estella Warren, who is more of the love interest in this movie. But I think you can still sense a little bit of that tension. I don't want to call it sexual tension, but you know what I mean, between Ari and Leo. Let's talk about Mark Wahlberg for a little bit. As a leading man in this movie, I do think that he seems a little off. And if you read behind the scenes, he even admits that this movie wasn't that good. And it was sort of rushed. And I can imagine when he was on set, this is one of those examples where the studio was interfering and they were rushing and they wanted to get this movie out by July of 2001. And Tim Burton, he's a director that likes to take his time. And so I think there was a lot of tension on set, and I think that shows in a lot of the performances. And don't get me wrong, Mark Wahlberg really wanted to work with Burton. He would have done anything with Burton, but I think he quickly realized that working under the big studio system doesn't always have its advantages. The big studios, they're always against the clock. They're always trying to meet that deadline. And we've seen this story play out so many times throughout the years. You know, Alien 3 is probably one of the biggest stories. That drove David Fincher crazy. I think Tim Roth is probably the best part of this. And he actually got to write some of his own lines in the movie. He really got into character. And I think he was downright scary at times, which is saying something because he is smaller in scale than like some of the bigger characters like Michael Clark Duncan. But his performance is kind of terrifying. I think you're constantly glued to him throughout the whole movie. And maybe a little of that performance came through the pain that he was going through because he had back problems after doing this movie because of the costume that he had to wear. It was just never comfortable, and he constantly complained about it. And, I think that's a benefit to the movie because there's like very little, if any, CGI in this. I'm sure some of the space stuff had CGI, but you can tell they used actual ape outfits for all the ape characters. And I think this is one of those situations where I do prefer, I guess, the CGI, and I know that's probably a controversial thing to say. Yeah, I don't hate the ape suits in this movie, but the CGI in these new ape movies, this trilogy that just came out, looks phenomenal. Caesar turned out to be one of the best characters, I think, of the last decade, and it's all CGI. So that's just a case where CGI is not always a bad thing. Whereas I think the ape suits in this movie, I think they serve their purpose, but you could tell that they're actors in ape suits. Whereas in this new trilogy, it looks real. But, circling back to what I said at the beginning of the review, I've always had sort of this disconnect with this movie. Not getting fully locked in to the action scenes, the plot. I do love Tim Burton, but I think Mark Wahlberg as Leo in the movie, putting him up against other leading men, I don't think he compares, And again, Mark Wahlberg admitted it himself. The movie has major problems. But I still have fun with Planet of the Apes, Tim Burton's. I'll give it a high humdrum, I do watch it from time to time, probably like once every 5 years, something like that. But you can see that studio interference in the movie for sure. The ending is really cool though. I do like the twist in this movie, how they kind of flipped it from the original movie. So yeah, I want to know your thoughts because I don't hear people talking about this movie that often, honestly. And I think this new trilogy kind of eclipsed Tim Burton's because now they just talk about either the original or this new trilogy. So let me know what you guys think of Kingdom of the Apes 2001 in the comments. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Fever Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on all my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. And you guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.